with another episode of the Miss Myers Show. So today, you guys are so lucky because you get to see my hair in all its beautiful naturalness. This is why I wear it up most days, but it's at the point where it's been up for so long. It's starting to like hurt. Like I'm getting pain in my head because I'm wearing that, like I'm constantly pulling it up. So you guys get this wonderful privilege, so feel honored. Okay, so what we're doing and covering today is chapter 4, and it's the very last part of chapter 4. So it is, and I know, like I've told you guys before, chapter 4 is, excuse me, we're doing chapter 7. Oh, sorry. So chapter 7, part 4, how about that? It's the very end of it. And the reason it's just so exhaustive, which is chapter 7 is just like ridiculously exhaustive, it is because it covers pretty much like antebellum, the whole war, and Reconstruction. So it's a lot in this one chapter. I don't know why they made it one chapter. They should have done 2. But whatever, I didn't write the textbook. Okay, so we are doing pages. You're starting on page, and I know, look, I need to have my nails done. I'm falling apart. I'm totally falling apart, guys. I need a Thanksgiving break. Okay? All right, so we are going from page, and don't write in your textbook like me. I'm a bad example. Don't do that. This is my textbook, so I write in it. Okay, so are we doing it this one? Yeah. Okay, so you're doing page 267. In fact, I just wrote it down right here. I could have just looked over here. It would have been so much easier, Jennifer. So you're reading, I mean, not read, well, you are reading. Gosh, I'm really messing up this Miss Myers Show. And I usually will edit this out, but you know what? I'm not, because I just don't want to. There's a lot of editing that goes into the Miss Myers Show because I mess up or do something dumb or something, you never know with me. So, but I'm leaving all this in because I don't feel like editing it out. So let me restate this for you so that you're not completely and utterly confused. You are going, what we are going to be reviewing is the very last section. It's going to be lesson 4, and that's from pages 267 to 278. It's not a lot, but there is a lot of stuff that's in here. And in my prior experience, using my prior knowledge, I find that these standardized tests, they focus so much on the Civil War, and I don't know why, but they do. They seem to go from early colonization all the way to the Civil War, and then they kind of little bits and pieces from everything else. So I'm like, okay, so we're gonna focus on antebellum, Civil War, Reconstruction, because that is like the really big areas that in the past that I've seen a lot of attention being placed on. All right, so what we're doing, and first thing we're going to talk about is the entire process of Reconstruction. Now, we talked about it last week when we talked about the difference between Lincoln's plan for Reconstruction and Johnson's plan for Reconstruction. Lincoln and Johnson both had plans for Reconstruction that were very, very lenient, and they wanted to get the southern states back into the Union as quickly as possible. They wanted to avoid any other, bust-ups or drama. They didn't want any of that. They wanted to get this happening. Remember, there were 2 types of Republicans that were existing at this time. You had your moderate Republicans and your radical Republicans. Now, your moderate Republicans were the ones with, like, Lincoln and Johnson that said, okay, let's just let's get them back. Let's get things going the way it was. Let's just, go get back to being a country. And then your radical Republicans were the ones that were saying, absolutely not. The South needs to be punished, because if they're not punished, they will continue to do this kinds of thing over and over and over again. And so it was just, you had these 2 factions that were really battling it out for how the southern states should re-enter into the Union. Now, there was a lot of issues because of the fact once Lincoln died. When Lincoln died and Johnson took over control, there was a lot of issues. And it was mainly because a lot of people did not like Johnson. They really didn't. He was not, Lincoln wasn't some serious charismatic person either. Abraham Lincoln suffered with severe depression, to the point where he was just totally morose. He didn't want to even talk to people. He didn't want to have anything. He was very, very depressed. So it wasn't like Abraham Lincoln was this great, orator or leader. Not leader, not in the leader sense, but he wasn't like this guy that inspired people, let's go, let's get this done. But once he died and Johnson took over, there was a lot of issues that because people didn't like Johnson. He was not likable, okay? He was just not the kind of guy. You know, in Texas, I do love Texas. I'm gonna have to say I do love Texas, but it is not Louisiana. It is not. I can tell you right now, I don't know the names. I don't know the first names of any of my neighbors. Not one of them. I don't even know their last names. And I've been here for 4 years, and I couldn't tell you any of them because my office is obviously it's in my front bedroom because there's this lovely window in front of me. You can see everything. But anyway, I couldn't tell you this guy's name and his wife. I don't know. I say hi. But that's about it. I go next to, I don't know, hi, that's it. So it's like, okay, it's so different than it is in Louisiana. Because in Louisiana, everybody's your friend. You go outside, you're like, yeah, how's your mama, how's that? You know that they're kids, you know everything. It's like, that's how it is in Louisiana, especially in Chalmette. But here in Texas, not so much. And so I kind of before, not so much anymore, but when I first came here, I was like, I just don't like these people. They're just mean. They're just rude. I don't like any of these people. And so I kind of approached it with that kind of point of view. But eventually I was like, okay, they're not that they're rude. They're just not from Louisiana. So, but Johnson was that kind of guy. He just rubbed you the wrong way. He wasn't, he's just like, and he had a lot of enemies. So he faced a lot of pushback when he tried to declare Reconstruction over with, when it wasn't over with. He was like, okay, Reconstruction's over. And then the radical Republicans were like, no, it's not. And you have no way to say that because it's absolutely not. And he had a Congress, which Congress is your two houses. Remember, there's a federal, the 3 branches of government. We've got the executive branch, the legislative branch, and the judicial branch. The executive branch is the president. The legislative branch is Congress. Congress is made up of 2 houses, and we'll go over this in much more detail later on. But it's, they have 2 houses in Congress, the Senate and the House of Representatives. Now, before the president, the executive branch can really push through a lot of his agenda. We can't say her agenda yet. So before the president can go and push through any agenda, Congress has to approve it. They have to say yes or no. The president can veto it, but Congress can override the veto. So that's the whole process of checks and balances. Well, the problem was for Johnson was that he was, his Congress, his legislative branch were not for him, and they were going, anything that he did, they were like, I don't think so, this is not going to work. So they began looking for ways to get this guy out of office because obviously he was not going to be working with them. He was just not going to be doing it. And one of the issues, they kept trying to find a way to impeach him. And now impeaching, this is a big thing. I hear it all the time, and it drives me because you're like, impeach the president. I'm like, okay, do you know what that word means? Because they mustn't. Because some people are like, you need to impeach him. For what? What did he do? But that's my own, whatever. I'm like, I'm not saying if I support or do not support anything. I'm just saying how I feel about the word impeachment. So please do not say, Miss Meyer likes this or Miss Meyer is this. Because you don't know. I will never tell you what political party I affiliate with, and I will never tell you how I vote. So, quit trying to get it out of me. Because they've been trying, my students have been trying to get this out of me. Oh my gosh, since I was, 13, 12 years now. And they've never been able to. You never know. So anyway, what impeachment means and what the Congress wanted to do, especially the radical Republicans wanted to do with Johnson, was to accuse him of wrongdoing and to remove him from office. Now, that's why they you can't just accuse someone of wrongdoing to impeach them. You've got to actually have evidence of it. So like in today's society, oh goodness gracious, we see a lot of people that are like, oh, we need to impeach President Trump, we need to impeach him. Well, saying that he did something wrong is one thing, but you must have evidence that this happened in order to impeach someone. You can't just say, oh, well, he did this or he did that. You need to actually have the evidence. And that was the problem that the radical Republicans were having. Of course, they all had hearsay and say, oh, Johnson did this and Johnson did that and blah, blah, blah. But they needed to have actual proof in order to impeach him. So they started watching this guy. They were like, okay, we know it's not a question of if he's going to do something wrong. It's a question of when he's going to do something wrong. And that's what they did. And they were able to find it. And what he did was that he refused to let someone take their seat in Congress. He said, you can't take this seat anymore. I forbid you from doing that. And that was overreaching his power. He did not have the authority to do that. He refused to let this congressman take his seat, and that was not part of his power, and that was illegal. And they had evidence that he did that. So with that evidence, they were able to impeach him, and they were able to say, okay, you're impeached. Now, this is another thing. Bill Clinton was impeached. There were only two presidents who were impeached. Andrew Johnson was one, and Bill Clinton was the other one. Neither of them were removed from office. I mean, both of them were impeached, but neither one was removed from office. Just because you impeach someone does not mean that they are removed from office. They can be impeached, but can still stay in office. Bill Clinton did it, and so did Johnson. In the case of Bill Clinton, he was impeached for lying under oath. And like I said, they just needed evidence, and they had evidence that Bill Clinton did this, so they impeached him. And Johnson, they had evidence that he refused to allow this congressman to take his seat in the Senate, and therefore they impeached him. However, impeachment does not mean removal from office. A lot of people do not understand that. And I'm like, oh, it's because I'm not your history teacher. That's why. So, because, right? But that does not mean they're going to be removed from office. That just accuses them of wrongdoing. And if they are impeached, they are still able to stay in office as long as they get the votes to stay there, which both Johnson and Clinton did. Okay, so that's FYI, that's impeachment. Johnson was impeached. He was never going to win another term. Never, ever, ever. He knew that, but I mean, he was not removed from office. Now, in Louisiana, so let's go back to Louisiana. So in the United States, Johnson's impeached. He's got a lot of enemies in Congress right now. He's got a lot of them. In Louisiana, we've got our own issues. So you remember before the Civil War was even over, we had Benjamin Beast Butler here. That's, the ladies of New Orleans said that he stole their spoons and he treated the ladies as though they were not ladies. He was very unpopular here in Louisiana. So things in Louisiana were, kind of different because we do have people that are very, very unique in our state. We have extraordinarily unique parishes. So the way that one parish kind of operates and runs is very different from the way another parish can operate and run. I can tell you straight up, being from Chalmette, St. Bernard Parish, my way of everything is very different than someone that's from, let's say, Ascension Parish or St. Landry Parish or anything like that, because it's a whole different kind of way. So when the Reconstruction was happening and the Union was sending soldiers and they were sending people to kind of run the South, because we were right after Reconstruction, the South was turned into military districts. So we were not allowed back into the United States. We had to prove that we were ready to go back in there. We had to kind of, as we tell Vivian, make some good choices before we could go back into the United States. If we did not make those good choices, like we say to Vivian, we say, don't make a poor choice. We don't ever say bad, like you're bad. We never say that because she's a kid, she's not bad. But we do tell her she makes poor choices quite a lot, almost every day, at least 5 times a day. So anyway, we had to make good choices and then we could be back into the United States. Well, the problem with Louisiana was these military leaders and the military itself that were coming into Louisiana, they were finding that it was a very different kind of way, because when something worked, let's say over in Lake Charles or Shreveport or Baton Rouge, it may not have worked, in New Orleans or down, in, all those other smaller parishes towards the, the Bayou states and all these kind of things, Natchitoches, all those, it wouldn't work. And so that was why we were extremely unique, because it was just very different. People didn't act the same in these parishes. I mean, it's one state and it's like different little countries all over, and people don't understand that. They you know, especially in today. And I know you guys probably hear it too, because I do as well. As soon as somebody says, "Oh, you're from Louisiana? Oh, really? Blah, blah. Oh, you from?" And I tell them, "No, I'm from New Orleans." And they're like, "Oh, did you have a P-Rog?" I was like, "No, I'm from New Orleans. I'm from Chalmette. Are you kidding me?" And like, "Oh, do you go and hunt crawfish at night?" Like, I don't do those things, you know? I could reach out of my house and touch my neighbor. The only crawfish I've ever seen was kind of boiled and put in front of me. I mean, it's a different way of life in Louisiana, more than anywhere in this country that I could possibly think of. Is that Louisiana people are so completely different than each other, but all part of the cohesive unit of Louisiana. And that's part of the beauty of our state. However, you know, the radical Republicans during Reconstruction did not see the beauty in it. They just saw that this was an issue. They were like, okay, this is not going to really work out for us. We need to go another strategy. So what are the things that were happening in the South, and not so much in Louisiana, but it did have a big effect on Reconstruction in the South, especially when we did see these people coming into Louisiana. So with the federal I mean the United States, we were the Confederates, and then, you know, after we broke away, became the Confederate States of America. And then once the war was over and during Reconstruction, we were not necessarily part of the United States of America yet. So we were kind of like this pseudo entity. So when the federal troops from the United States started coming into the southern states and into Louisiana, it brought with them people that were just here to kind of make money off the situation. Now, I know you guys don't, I mean, maybe you do. I mean, I know you don't. You weren't born yet. But if you can ask your parents, and like, I know, like, after Katrina, there were so many people that had come to Louisiana, and definitely even Chalmette, and that were fixing houses, that they were contractors, and really all they did was steal your money. They basically did. They just stole your money, and it was a ridiculous amount of people. Well, a group of people came to the South after the Civil War to make money. I mean, there was a lot of building that needed to happen. There was people that needed, you know, everything was gone. So they needed some people to kind of help them out. And unfortunately, some people came without good intentions. And that is not anything that's new. That has been, like I said, it was happening in Katrina. And it happens all the time, unfortunately. But in the South, they called them during Reconstruction, they gave them really, really bad nicknames, and they were just, you know, hated on them, and they called them the carpetbaggers. So if you've ever seen or heard the term carpetbaggers, I know that if you watch Gone with the Wind, right? I know everybody in here can't wait to go watch it. Go on, it's great. But in Gone with the Wind, there are people that come around, and it's after the Civil War, and all the people are just like starving and having all these issues. And here rolls up these people, and they've got a brand new carriage, and they've got good clothes, and guys smoking a cigar, and they're well fed, and they are called the carpetbaggers. So they're like the boogeyman to the Reconstruction in the South. Okay. And they call them the carpetbaggers because they really didn't have anything. They were coming here to make money off of the people of Louisiana, and their luggage, the only kind of luggage that they had was this giant bag, and it was made out of carpet, and they would just put everything into it, and so they called it the carpetbaggers. But whatever. But it is worth knowing, okay? So in the 1868 Constitution, remember, this is when Louisiana was trying to return to the United States. Part of both plans, really, from Johnson and Lincoln, was, in order to join back into the United States, was to develop a new constitution. And the reason for this was because the old Louisiana Constitution contained a lot of stuff from the Black Codes, from slavery, all these things about slavery. The Black Codes were here in this Constitution, the old one. So now that the Civil War was over, and now that Reconstruction was going on, they needed a new Constitution that explicitly stated no slavery. Okay, that's not going to go on here, and all that kind of stuff. So the Constitution of 1868, it was really very progressive in the forms of, you know, the United States as it goes. Louisiana was always kind of on the forefront you know, we were making big changes before anybody else was like, you know, doing stuff. It was really just us. So we really had a lot of, you know, positive things that started here in this state that kind of went out to the other places. And one of those things was this Constitution, because in this Constitution of 1868, and I have multiple screens up, so as you can see, I might be looking somewhere else. I'm not crazy. I'm eccentric. But no, I'm looking at the different screens. So to be like, wow, what is she doing? So no, it is like the most important thing about this Constitution was that it was very progressive, and progressive means moving forward. You're progressing, because it did include African Americans in the framing of this Constitution. It actually asked and said, you know, like, well, what's your point of view? It actually did this, which is outrageously just, it was modern completely, because as you remember from last week's Miss Meyer show, declaring slavery as illegal was not the same as granting citizenship rights. So the Constitution of 1868 in Louisiana was very, very just groundbreaking, because it was the first one to include an equal number of white and black delegates at the convention to get everybody's point of view. And that's crazy, because we were the first actually, that I can think of, to do that. Because even though, like I said, the war was over, slavery was illegal, no slavery, but that was a far cry from granting citizenship rights. It really was, like, you know, so Louisiana, we were moving forward, we were progressing with this. So Louisiana, we have this new Constitution. We elect a new governor. His name is Henry Clay Warmoth. And you can see this guy. Look at this mustache. Okay? Look at this. My husband would be so jealous. Have those of you ever seen a picture or seen Mr. Meyer? And I don't know if you ever did. I don't think any of you did. But he's got a really big beard right here. And his mustache like long beard. He would be like, that's a cool mustache. Okay? And it's like no shave November or some kind of, I don't know. And I'm like, whatever, you better shave, because I don't know. I just think I don't know. This is, you know what I think of when I see a mustache this big? The food that gets caught in it. And the food that stinks. Because you know how I am about smells. So that's what I think of. I'm like, no. All right, so Henry Clay Warmoth is now the new governor of Louisiana. And he does seem pretty promising. This is one thing to you guys to never forget this, okay? Seriously, it's that important. What people run on when a candidate is running for office, the things they say to get elected are very different a lot of times than the things that they actually do. So when Warmoth was running for governor of Louisiana, he seemed like he would be a fair and balanced governor. He seemed as though that he would, work to really help the freed slaves and to kind of just make a communal area in Louisiana where everyone's voice could be heard, as long as you were a man and not a Native American. So he seemed he seemed progressive. He seemed like a good pick, okay? But as time goes on, we see how he kind of falters in this. So that when he was elected, he did seem to be a good idea. It was like, hey, this guy's going to work for us. He's going to, do all this kind of stuff. He's going to set this in motion. He's going to do this and that. It's just, he ended up not being as great as he sounded, which is a lot of times what happens. So another thing that's happening now in just with Louisiana, you guys remember, our entire money system was based on agriculture, on what we were growing. But the Civil War came along and destroyed that. We were initially one of the richest southern states. We became one of the poorest during the Civil War because of this. So the people in Louisiana had to find a way to get back on their feet. Now, not everyone in Louisiana came out, devastated. There were some people that retained money, and a lot of people who had come here from the north after the war, they had money and they were able to buy up these plantations or to buy up all this land. So you had people that were coming here from other parts of the country, up north area, and they were coming to Louisiana specifically because they knew the people of Louisiana would no way, no how could afford to keep their land, and they would buy it. And they would buy it because they had money, and they would take it over. This created an even bigger issue in the southern states, an even bigger one. So they decided that they had to have some type of way to allow and to help these, the farmers and all that in Louisiana and in the South as general to kind of get back on their feet. So they established two systems, and both of them were not good. Both of them were basically a cycle of poverty that you could never get out of. But at this point in time, when you have your kids that are like, I'm starving, your wife's dying, your kids are dying, you don't have a house, you don't have clothes, you don't have food, you're going to take what you can get, for a lot of people. So they put two things into place. One was called a crop lien. And a crop lien was probably your best bet. If you had a choice, because the other one's called sharecropping. If you had a choice between doing a crop lien and sharecropping, crop liens were the way to go. And like I said, were not that great. But if you had to pick one, this would be the one to pick. And let me tell you why. Because when you had a crop lien, you borrowed money from a bank or something like that. And you would sign a contract. It's kind of like taking a loan out on your car or a student loan like I did. And I am still paying back. And I will be paying back until the day that I die. Okay? So you take out a loan to kind of establish your land again, to get your crops going, to get everything handled, and just to get things up and running. And you would pay a percentage every so often of your loan back. So when you would start making money with your crops, you would pay a percentage of that, take that money, take a percentage of it, and then you would go and give it to the bank as a payment. Like I said, that one, it seems like, if out of the two, that one is the one I'm going to pick. But the problem was getting the banks to give loans to people, because the bank, even today, they're not going to want to give a loan to someone that they don't feel can pay that loan back. Okay, so if you don't have credit, because a lot of young people, you don't have credit. Like when I was in college, oh my word, my hair. But when I was in college and I was getting all these credit cards, I was getting them for stupid reasons. But, I had these extremely high interest rates because I had no credit. And they were giving me a credit card as a student in college. So the likelihood of me paying them back on time or at all would be slim. So they would make it so that your interest was super high. Meaning when I'm talking about interests, that would mean like if the farmers, they would have to pay a set amount of money back to pay off their loan, but they would have to pay a little bit extra money to pay for the right of that loan. So if you took out a loan for, I don't know, $20,000, paying it back, you would actually be paying back $35,000. The $20,000, that's your loan, but the $15,000, that's interest that you're paying the bank for the right to use this loan, and that gets broken up into the months as well. So the problem with crop leaning and to use it, even though it would be better, was because they were not ready to give out these loans to people that they were very unsure that they would ever pay it back. So sharecropping became very popular in the South and in Louisiana, New Orleans, not really New Orleans, but in Louisiana as well. And what that meant was that let's say that someone had a huge amount of land, and what they would do is they would section it off, and they would give pieces of the land out to people and say, okay, well, you can live here, you can have a house, you can do all these things, and all you're going to do for me is you are going to work in this, do the job in my crops, and I'll pay you, and you'll be able to, eventually get out of debt and go and make your own farm. This was not how it worked, though. It was a severe cycle of poverty, which we're going to discuss in class in much more detail. So don't worry too much about that. We will be talking about this on Tuesday. Okay, so sharecropping was a cycle of poverty. You were never, ever out of poverty, really. Liens, yes, they did trap people in debt. I mean, I'm deeply in debt, but it was easier, I think, to get out of that cycle of debt with the crop lien than it would be with a sharecropping. The next thing we're talking about is the Freedmen's Bureau, because if you guys remember this, oh, you know what, too? I have a really bad headache right here. Oh. So in Gone with the Wind, I always scream at the television. I usually do scream at my TV. It's mostly because, you know, for one, I don't like TV, but when I do watch it, it's mostly like Jeopardy. I have a problem with Jeopardy because I scream the answers at the TV and I'm like, what is that? It's just really crazy. But anyway, I scream at my television every time, or my whatever I'm watching it on iPad, whatever. Every time there's a scene in Gone with the Wind where Scarlett's like running after the slaves, her slaves, because they are digging ditches for the Confederacy, and which is the South, and they're her slaves, and she's like, where are you guys going? And they're like, oh, we're gonna go help the Confederate soldiers. And then she's like, oh my gosh, oh, please be safe, please be safe. If you get sick or hurt, can you let me know? And I'm like, how do you let you know? It was illegal for them to learn how to read and write. How are you gonna let you know? Carrier pigeon? Smoke signals? What? You're so, it just drives me crazy. But anyway, slaves did not know how to write and read. It was illegal to teach them how to read and write. Therefore, many of them lacked basic skills. They didn't know how to read, write, recognize letters. They couldn't even sign their names. Most of them, when they said, okay, sign this, they would just put an X or a mark, because they had no idea how to write or read or to even print letters or anything like that. So a bureau came to the South, in Louisiana, because obviously we're in the South, and they set up places like agencies to help not only the freed slaves, but also poor white and African-American men who were born free. So they were here to help all these poor people and the freed slaves get an education, you know, get a way to live their life, to protect them from people that were trying to, you know, take advantage of them and things like that. And it was really beneficial because they were helping these people and saying, hey, you know what, you can do this, and this is not, they're breaking the law by doing this to you, and you have these rights. So it was really to help not only the freed slaves, but also the poor white people and the free men of color at the time too, to kind of protect them from, and to show them, you know, basic things. It was a really good thing. But there were a lot of people that did not like this. There was a lot of people that were saying, oh, this is going too far, because they saw, this is how they saw it, okay? So they viewed it like this. They said, oh my gosh, they're teaching the slaves to read and write, or the former slaves. They're gonna take it over. They're gonna come and kill us in our beds. They're gonna take over the South. They're gonna just do all this and it's over. They're gonna take over. So they started freaking out, which was just so stupid, but they did. And they got a lot of people to join them with them. And they started these terror organizations like the Ku Klux Klan, the Knights of the Knights of the White Camellia, the Knight, what was the other one? There's another one, huh? The White League. I mean, things like that. And their whole goal was to scare people, Republicans, radical Republicans, and freed slaves, and people that were helping the freed slaves, to scare them into submission, to make them believe that they were going to, you know, hurt them if they didn't do this. And they did. I mean, they killed people. They would hang them from the trees. They would beat them to death. They would kill. They would maim. They would burn down their houses. They would do horrible things. And so their whole tactic was to use this violence to get the freed slaves and anyone else to do what they wanted them to do. And it was horrifying. And the whole reason that they would do is, like, they would, especially the KKK and such, they would put the white sheets on their heads because they wanted to scare the former slaves and tell them that they were their masters and that they were the ghosts of their dead masters, and that they were going to come and kill them. And so, I mean, that's scary for anybody, you know? So they were able to really kind of infiltrate government, not only in Louisiana, but through the entire South. And that was really, really hindering the process of continuing Reconstruction. These these terrorist hate groups were making it so that people were so scared that they did not want to go and vote, even if they had the choice. And if they did go and vote, that they would vote the way that these groups would want them to, because they were so fearful. And so it really did put a damper on any real progressive growth as far as Reconstruction was going on. So, but Louisiana continued to be one, but right now though, these groups like the KKK, the Knights of the White Camellia, the White League, they were really held in check because we were still under control of a military district from the United States. We still had federal soldiers here in Louisiana that were making sure that these groups did not get, crazy powerful and take over everything. So we did still see some advancements, very big advancements in Louisiana in regards to Reconstruction. Another way that New Orleans was a major player is that two ways, okay? So here's the one thing. The first way was that New Orleans became the first city in the entire United States to integrate public schools. And that means that have children that are African-American children and white children. At this time, there's not anything as far as the Native Americans, Hispanic, Asian. It was just we were the first city in the United States after Reconstruction to try out integrating public schools. It did not last. Okay, not until the 50s that came around. It did not last. However, we were the first state to give it a shot, which is saying something. And, it was not a successful attempt, but we still were the first ones to give it a shot. Another big thing came in Louisiana when Warmoth was impeached. Now, Warmoth was not, like I said before, he seemed extraordinarily promising. He really did. But when it came down to it, he was very, very lenient. He was not for the radical Republicans. He did not want to help out the freed slaves. He was not all those things. He really wasn't. And so he had a lot of issues with just kind of allowing the Reconstruction to progress like it should. In 1870, we had now the 15th Amendment was passed, and the 15th Amendment protected the right to vote for African Americans and freedmen. Now, he had to go with it because this is an amendment to the Constitution, the United States Constitution. However, he wasn't thrilled about it. So when the 1872 election in Louisiana, Warmoth, they had two people that were running. They had John D. McHenry, and he was a Democratic candidate, which meant he was totally against Reconstruction. And then they had a Republican candidate who was who was Warmoth's person in the party member, whatever, named William P. Kellogg, like the cereal guy. And what had happened is that Warmoth refused to support Kellogg, even though Kellogg was in his political party. And the political party members and the leaders of the party were telling Warmoth, you've got to support Kellogg. You can't support this other guy. He wants to undo everything that we've done. You're going to go and support some guy that wants to completely overturn everything we worked so hard for. You can't do this. Wow. Warmoth said, oh, watch me. And so what had happened was he was impeached. Once again, they tried to find him. You can't impeach him unless you have evidence of wrongdoing. So they found something and they impeached him. And once he was thrown out of the governor's office, they needed someone else to take over. And this is where Louisiana, we are just, like I said, we are one of the first states to really just embrace kind of changes, especially as it goes as far as like civil rights and even after the Reconstruction and all this kind of things. So we have no governor now because Warmoth is gone. He is removed from office. He's not like Johnson or Clinton. He is removed from office. And once he's removed from office, they put in this guy by the name of PBS Pinchback. His name was Pinckney Benton Stewart Pinchback. And they made him governor. And let me tell you why it's so important. Why is it really important? For number one, he was born in Georgia. He was born in Georgia. And his father was a white planter. And his mother was a former slave. And this was not like, remember we talked about the relationships that they would have before. His parents were married. Okay? So that was real. Talk about unbelievable. I mean, they were actually married. But once his dad died, and then his mom and his siblings, they all came with him and they moved away from all, after the Civil War, they kind of all moved to Ohio because they wanted to stay safe, really, especially, with the Civil War and all that kind of stuff. Well, eventually they Pinchback and his family, whatever, they moved to New Orleans, and he became really a big political person. He worked in Louisiana. He was a delegate to the state constitutional convention in 1867. He was elected to the state legislature. He did all these things, and eventually he served as governor. And he was the first black governor ever in all of American history, and it was in Louisiana. Now, he was not officially governor. He was only governor for a short period of time between Warmoth and the, person that would come after him, but he was still governor. And he was still the first African-American one, which is pretty cool. All right. And now, after this, we've got PBS Pinchback in place, but things are starting to slide. And that's because these groups, like the KKK, the Knights of the White Camellia, and the White League, are starting to really gain precedence, especially after PBS Pinchback is governor. Like I said before, these groups played on fears and not actualities. So their big fear that they were trying to make the people of the South feel, and in Louisiana, was that these, the former slaves were trying to take over Louisiana, and they were going to get rid of everything, and they were going to destroy the state and all this. They were really scaring people and, unfounded. And so once you have, now Louisiana had a black governor, it really gave them a lot of fodder as material, to scare people in Louisiana even more and to make them do what they wanted them to do. So these groups became really big, and to the point where there was a riot outside of Liberty Place, and it was in New Orleans. And what it was that you had these groups of people, the White Leaguers, basically. They had a bunch of Republicans in there, African-American Republicans, white Republicans, were meeting. And so a big group of these, people in these groups, like the White Knights and the KKK, they knew that these radical Republicans were meeting, and they went to where they were meeting, and they stayed out there and waited for them to come out. And when they came out, they just attacked. And it wasn't, the crazy part was that among its leaders were the New Orleans police, metropolitan. Wait. No, that was another one. I'm thinking of another riot. Sorry. But there were so many people in this riot at Liberty Place that the guards, the federal troops, had to be called in to break it up because it was so intense that the Governor Kellogg, Kellogg had taken over after Pinchback. I'll go over that little, I don't want to confuse. So it was Warmoth, Kellogg. Well, actually, it was Warmoth. Then he was thrown out of office. It was Pinchback for a period of time. Then it was Kellogg. So the radical Republicans were here meeting with Kellogg, and here come these people. They're like a group of people that are screaming and, and hurting people and killing people, that that Kellogg is actually forced into hiding, and he has to call up federal troops, American troops, and say, come and save me and replace order here so that we are not killed, because these people they're coming to kill us. So what they did, the federal troops did come in, They did save Kellogg. They did disperse of this crowd, but it made it very, very clear to the radical Republicans in this state that without federal help, Louisiana would succumb to these groups easily. So they knew that their control, or what they were trying to do, was very, very easily manipulated by these groups. And they knew that the moment they removed those troops from the South, Louisiana especially, that there was going to be a lot of hate and things that were going to come right back into the South. So it'd be slavery by another name, basically. And that's exactly what did happen. Now, the way that it happened was an election was happening for president. There was two people running. It was Rutherford B. Hayes and Samuel Tilden, okay? So these were the two people running for the presidential election. Well, the southern states were making it very difficult for Hayes to become president, and that's who the Union wanted. The Union wanted Hayes. The South down here, with the exception of the Republicans, wanted Tilden. They wanted this guy because he was a Democrat. They wanted this guy to be president, and they were making it really, really difficult. So it came down to the point where the Union people, the people from the Union, had come down and told the Southerners, what can we do to make you allow Hayes to become president of the United States? What can we do to make you stop causing this much of a ruckus? Because they really were. And they said, you want us to vote for Hayes? Then you have to remove every single federal soldier out of the South today. And the Union wanted Hayes to be president so badly that they said, okay. And the moment that they removed the troops from the South, guess what happened? All of that progression, all of that work with Reconstruction was gone. Was just gone. Now, they could not reinstitute slavery. That's already been, they couldn't do that. But they did everything they possibly could to make it slavery just by another name. And now, without the Republicans there and without the federal Union troops, and it was kind of slipped back, way, way back. And not until the Civil Rights Acts of the 50s and 60s do we see any real progress starting to happen again. So, all of that. We didn't have slavery anymore, but it was basically slavery by another name. Okay, so that's all I've got for you guys today. Hope you enjoyed the Miss Myers Show. I know it was a little long, and I'm not editing it because I'm just tired of doing it. Here's your code word right down here. Make sure that you put it in. And if you are not doing as well as I would like, or as you would like in this class, please go to the folder in your class content that says Catch Up Plan of Action. Follow the steps. I want to work with you. I want you to pass. Please help me help you. So that's all I've got for you guys. I will see you next time. Bye. And our mascot, Vivian Lee. And what we're going to do today is we're going to show you how to make hardtack. Now, the first thing that we need when we're making hardtack is flour. Assistant, hand me the flour. Let me assist my assistant. Bring me the flour. All right, so you're going to use your flour. You're going to pour about a cup of it. You can pour a little bit less or a little bit more, depending on how much hardtack you want to make. So, Vivian, what's that? Flour. She's very interested in the flour. That's very good. So you take your flour, going to open it, push back a little. Okay, pour it into our bowl. All right. We're making very good cookies. Are you going to eat one?
Yes.
All right. Okay, wait. Next, you're going to take your water. Water, you then pour into your flour. Assistant? There you go.
That looks pretty. The flour.
Then, all you do is you take your spoon and you mix it up.
That looks kind of like dough.
So you're going to mix it a little bit more. You're going to spread it around. And you want it to be kind of consistent and a little thick. It's kind of soupy here because my number 2 assistant added a little too much water. So then you're going to add just a little more flour to it. Now, what hardtack was, remember guys, that during the Civil War, these soldiers didn't have a lot of food. I just ripped my bag of flour. Look at this. All right. They didn't have a ton of food, so they had to make do with what they had. Now, hardtack was basically comes and turns into like a cracker form, and that cracker was all they basically had. They would try to drink it with their morning coffee or things like that. So in the beginning of the war, this was just a staple of their diet. Now, as the war went on in the South, they stopped, they were kind of like cut off from all of the North had cut them off from different ways of getting food. They had to make do with even less food. So they turned to just eating whatever it was they could. So their main choice of food were their horses. Now, after their horses were gone, they turned to other things. Like this. You ready to be dinner? Are you ready to be somebody's dinner? Beastie? Come on, Beast. We're going to eat you. Let's go eat you. Come on. Come on. We're going to come eat you now. What you're going to do, you're going to use your spray, because if you don't use spray or butter or whatever it is to, make your pan a little, something non-stick, it's going to stick. So what you're going to do here, you take your hardtack and you're going to spoon it in like cookies. That's all you're going to do. All right. So you get the gist.
All right, I have a question.
Sure.
How did they make the hardtack harden if there were no ovens to put it in?
That is a very good question. What they would do is they would take it and they'd roll it into, use a lot more flour than we just did. They'd roll it into little dough balls and they would make it over an open flame. And that's what they would do basically. And if it wasn't fully cooked, they ate it anyway. So after you make your hardtack, you're going to put it in your oven at 350 degrees for about 10 minutes. All right, our class mascot is going to be our first person to try our hardtack. Let's see what she thinks. It's yummy. Is it yummy? Now keep in mind, guys, she'll eat anything. The true test is with the other two. Here, you want a cookie? You like it?
Yes.
You do?
Mm-hmm.
Hey, you want a cookie?
Sure. Can I go put salt on it?
No. We don't put salt on our cookies.
But salt tastes good like cookies.
Do you like it?
No.
Katie thinks it's great. Katie! What you did? You spit it out? In class today, Tigger is so super excited because we are going to learn about the other final causes of the Civil War. Look at the excitement emulating from Tigger. He's super excited. And I know you are too.